Hello and welcome back to our cottage garden. You've joined us on a beautiful winter's day in mid-January. I've got my garden notebook and we've been up to quite a lot considering that it's winter, so welcome. In the last month it's been quite mild here. We have had a few frosts which have been really beautiful. I managed to grab a little bit of footage of those, but not too much. But you can see today that when the frost melts away, the garden really is quite muddy. We've got patches of mud absolutely all over the lawn, and I think it can't be avoided when you keep animals. We've obviously still got the ducks out at the moment, and the dogs have a hobby of scratching up the grass as well, so it's on my to-do list to reseed some patches of the lawn when spring comes around. But we do like to be honest here, so things are a little bit messy, and I'm pretty sure I say that in every video. This time of year it's all about appreciating the backbone of the garden and some of the evergreen structures, and I've been really pleased because I've been working really hard on these over the last 12 months. You can see next to me we've got the ligustrum lollipops are still looking really lovely. Those are obviously evergreen. We've got some Ilex crenata bushes that I am gradually training into a dome. We've got the box hedges and an amazing backdrop of English yew as well. I think I added about 26 new yew hedges to the garden last year, and when everything else is in flower, you don't notice things like that. But in winter, when everything's lost its leaves and most of the plants have died, it's really good to have something like that to fall back on. And we've got the lovely hazel hurdles and the willow weaving as well. So I feel really pleased with how we've worked on the structure of the garden over the last year and been appreciating it through this month. The bulbs are just starting to push through the surface of the soil now, which is giving us lots of hope for the weeks ahead. So if you do join us in our February garden tour next month, we should be able to have a look at some snowdrops and some iris reticulata, maybe some early crocuses. Normally the species crocuses flower end of January, early Feb. We did have another storm to deal with within the last month, and it actually broke the roof on our duck house, and the roof was made of a corrugated plastic material, and in the storm it shattered into loads of really small sharp pieces, and did end up injuring one of the ducks. So poor Dolly had an injury to her eye, and we were really worried. We had to rush her to the vets, and there was a chance that she would need the eye removed because it had cut open quite badly. But thankfully she's healed really well. We had to put her on some antibiotic eye drops and some anti-inflammatory medication. She healed really well in the space of a few days, so that was a big relief. If you watched our yearly recap video, you might remember us saying that this time last year we had a lot of trouble with our ducks needing to go to the vets, and we were really hoping that this year would be a bit easier. So it hasn't really gone off to the best start, but thankfully she's made a good recovery. Aaron got up a ladder and repaired the roof of the duck house, and while he was up there he widened the skylight as well so they get a bit more natural light in there. We were worried that because they haven't been laying eggs very much that they perhaps weren't getting enough natural light in there, so that might help with that. We'll just see, but they're still not laying at the moment, so we'll see what happens. But as you can see, it's not flocked down yet. They're still allowed out in the garden, which is really good for their well-being. Not so much the best news for our lawn, but I'm glad the ducks are happy. If you like these videos, please remember to like, comment and subscribe, and also you can pre-order my new book Growing via the link in the video description. Probably the best thing about January though is that our hellebores are in flower, and I absolutely adore hellebores. You can see that I've got some on either side of me here. We notice in the garden that they flower in a kind of staggered fashion through November, probably up to March. We've got loads of different varieties, and I think it depends on how they've been bred as to which time they flower. So the ones we've got flowering at the moment are some of our earlier hellebores. We've got the Corsican hellebore next to me here, otherwise known as the holly-leaved hellebore, and it's quite a plain looking hellebore as far as they go now that we've got loads of interesting hybrids, but I do think it's really beautiful in its own right, and I love the pale green flowers on that one. It's always one of our earlier ones to flower. And then we've also got one of the gold collection hellebores to my right. I can't remember which variety this is. I'm going to guess that it might be Lulu, but if you know more about hellebores than I do, please feel free to correct me. I do keep all of the tags, but sometimes the colours fade on those and I can't remember what I've put where, so there is a bit of guesswork involved. I think the flowering times depend on how they've been bred. So the ones that we've got flowering at the moment are probably bred with the Christmas rose or the snow rose, and then as we move into February there'll be varieties that have been bred with the Lenten rose. Most of the ones in flower at the moment are from the Gold collection though. We've got varieties including Lulu, Leona, Early Red, Picotee and quite a few others, so they are lovely to see. If you stay tuned for our video next month, I'll be able to show you more of the hybrid Hellebores that have been bred from the Lenten roses. So this includes the Ashwood Nurseries Evolution Group Hellebores, which are stunning. They're probably the most amazing things in the garden. I absolutely love them, and they're on the pricier side, so they're plants that I really see as special, and I can't wait for those to get big and to be able to start multiplying them and spreading them around the garden. They're really, really easy plants though. They're good for popping in a shady corner where not many other plants will tolerate the shade. So on this side next to me here, the Hellebores really thrive and they get a lovely leaf mulch from the trees above. As they're just starting to flower, I do remove the leaves so that the display looks really lovely, but it's also good for the health of the plants, because if we leave the leaves, they can spread diseases between plants. I haven't finished taking all of the leaves off, so as we move closer to the house, you'll see some of them still look quite bushy, and the Evolution Group Hellebores have really, really striking yellow leaves, and I think if you're not familiar with them, they kind of look potentially a bit like they're lacking in a certain mineral, but it is by design. They have been bred to look like that, and it really makes them stand out. Probably what I'll do towards February is gather up a bowl and cut some of the flowers off and float them in the water, because it's a really lovely way of displaying them. And I also think they look like tiny water lilies. They're stunning, so I can't wait to do that and share that with you. This time of year is really good for getting on top of jobs that will set us up for the garden year ahead. So I have had a big clear out of the shed, tidied things up a bit, and Aaron and I have been using the pressure washer to clean the greenhouses and the polytunnel. And it's a job that I really, really enjoy doing, and I think a lot of garden jobs feel like you have to wait an immensely long time to get a reward from them, but pressure washing, because you can instantly see the results, you feel like you're actually working towards something tangible. I find it really relaxing, so it's really good to get that done. We put a bit more effort in than usual, particularly on the greenhouse behind me, because it was all clogged up with some really big pieces of moss. And it's good to keep the glass clear so that we can get maximum light in, and that will just help our seedlings and our crops have a healthy rate of development. We're both really, really pleased with the difference it makes, and I think this time of year when the garden feels kind of muddy and a bit messy and not too much going on, it's nice to have a backdrop of really clean, lovely structures, so we were really pleased with the before and after for those. For the first 3 years of living here, we used to wash the greenhouses in the polytunnel with basically a long mop and buckets of water that we carried up from the house, and it took ages. It was really, really cold. We also struggled with the water starting to go frosty as we were chucking it on the glass. So we have plumbed in water since then, and getting a pressure washer was the best investment ever. Made the job really, really easy. I think it took us about an afternoon to pretty much clean all three 2 greenhouses and 1 polytunnel. So very, very satisfying to get that done. The other job that I'm still working on is getting my bulbs in the ground, and I'm probably quite behind, but I'm not worried. I have been storing my bulbs in the greenhouse behind me, so what I'm hoping is that they will pick up on the winter temperatures and kind of synchronise with the ones that I've got in the ground already, and hopefully flower at the same time. Obviously the risk with planting bulbs late is that they will flower a bit later or not at all. So I'm hoping by keeping them outside rather than in the house, they'll be more in sync with the ones that I have planted already, and hopefully the flowering won't be too staggered. But it's not the end of the world. They're all bulbs that should flower year after year anyway, so if they don't look good this year, perhaps they will look better next year. So I think I've done about 700 of my bulbs so far, and I've got about 200 tulips left to go in. The areas that I've been focusing on mainly this year are the new border in front of our new yew hedge, and I've been putting in things like daffodils and alliums that should flower in the spring and give us something that will come back every year. Big white alliums, so they'll be quite showy, and I think I put maybe 300 of those in it was quite a lot. If you watch the bulb planting video, you might remember better than I do. But I finished that border, and what I'm currently working on is getting some perennial tulips in the bed closer to the house. And this is a collection of tulips curated by Sarah Raven based on the tulips that do really well in her garden. And I think she said some of them in her garden have flowered for about 15 years consecutively, so that's incredible. I'm not hoping for that kind of success because I think we do have quite damp soil, especially closer to the house, but if I get a couple of years out of them, I'll be really pleased. I have noticed some of them that I planted a bit too shallow have been dug up by squirrels, so as I finish those I'm going to make more of an effort to plant them a little bit deeper, but really excited for spring and to see those bulbs again. The next thing that I'm planning on working on is doing a little bit more weaving. So if you've been watching our videos for a while, you might remember when I made this edging next to me here with some willow from a local farm. And closer to the house we have some hazel hurdles that I put in about 3 years ago, and they're just starting to go really brittle and fall over, and I can't really rely on them anymore. And they're a structural feature, so I use them to keep the dogs and the ducks off my crocus lawn when that flowers in February, so I do need to replace them. I'm going to do a continuous weave of the willow rather than individual hurdles, so that should make it a little bit stronger and hopefully it will last longer. So I'm going to take out those hurdles. Rather than burn or compost them, I'm going to put the old hazelwood in piles in our wildlife areas around the garden. We currently have 4 wildlife areas in the garden. If I've got excess sticks or logs or even weeds that I've dug up or leaves, I'll just tuck them away in piles behind trees and under hedges. It's really good for larger animals like hedgehogs when it comes to hibernating, but also for smaller things like beetles that rely on decaying wood for sources of food and shelter. And I have noticed that we've got lesser stag beetles around the garden now, which is really amazing, and they rely on decaying wood. So it's obviously paying off. So I'm going to put the excess hazel in my wildlife areas, and then I've got my willow ready to weave. I'm going to cut some new hazel sticks to use as the support and then get weaving, and I'll show you a bit of that process in the next video. So that's more or less everything for our January garden tour. Hope you've enjoyed having a look around today. Be sure to stay tuned for February because we'll start seeing things like snowdrops and Iris reticulata. And the earliest flowering bulbs should be really lovely. So thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time.